All right, this is Johnny, and I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is September 25th, 2011. And by the grace of God, I haven't had to pick up a drink. And I think the miracle is that I can handle sometimes situations that used to baffle me. Ain't that something?
Yeah.
And today I finally get to sit down with Joe. As I remember, I came in 2011, and then you were already here. And they called you Bicycle Joe because you were always on a bicycle, right?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I became obsessed with bicycles. Yes.
okay, so it wasn't just some kind of rumor that he was
It
Bicycle
was
Joe.
transportation was a necessity, and then it became like this is fun, and wow, who knew?
Yeah. So I'm here with Bicycle Joe, and welcome, Joe. Thank you for taking time from your schedule and sitting down. Hopefully, we can get some good stuff, some experience, strength, and hope. What is your sobriety date?
Joe, I'm an alcoholic, and my sobriety date is 1/1/03, and I've been sober a little while. Um, Not always soundness of mind, but the emotional sobriety came later,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But good thing I stuck around,
So
you
what's
know.
that? That's about 20,
22 years.
22 years. And,
22
and why are
years.
you still here, Joe, at 22 years?
Why am I still here? To be honest with you, I know why I'm still here is because if I stay in AA, like I said, it's I've discovered that it wasn't about the drinking. It was more about my mental health, and um, if I want to keep soundness of mind and be comfortable in my skin and be able to do things that I can do, I have to come here to be reminded that it's alcoholism, not alcoholism.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's and that's true. That I think that's for me. It's exactly the same thing. You
yeah,
know, I wanted 30 days, and I really thought alcohol was my problem. I really, really did believe
for
that.
a
That I
long
thought
time. Yeah.
if I just put the drink away, I'm gonna be that gentleman. I'm gonna feel the way I feel today, right now,
Right.
in 2011, my first day of coming in here, and it turns out that there was a lot of work that needs to be done,
yeah,
and I had no idea what it was. I
yeah,
just thought put the drink down, and and I remember seeing you, and I remember your message was a lot different than it is today.
yeah.
I don't know if you remember, you know.
First of all, when I got to AA, I was pretty out there. And, I was struggling with depression and I didn't know where I was half the time, but I knew that I couldn't drink anymore. That was just the basics. And like you said, um, I thought it for a long time in sobriety. I thought it was because alcohol that's the way that I was. But through the process of all this work that we do here and a lot of pain that motivated me to do it, I discovered well once you take the alcohol away that there's more stuff to deal with there,
Yeah.
and I didn't know that for a long time, and my first shares at meetings were just about paranoia and all these things that my mind was saying to me, and really I know today didn't match up to reality, and the truth is I couldn't handle reality. And when I got here, I would share at these meetings, and the people would clap. All right, Joe. Like they didn't say you're too crazy for AA. What the hell are you talking about? None of that stuff. They just were like,
Welcome
they
home.
embraced me like, okay, he's one of us. Just clap and accept him, and eventually he'll, start to embrace this thing. And then later on, I did the half measures things for a long time, like because I still didn't believe it would work because like the first court cards that I had, it was like I had several court cards over the years. And I'd sit in the back of meetings and I'd look at the people, and they were older and they had been through more stuff, and I would think, whatever's wrong with those people ain't the same thing that's wrong with me, because I'm not that bad.
Yeah, yeah.
And then later on, it became the other way around. Whatever's wrong with me ain't the same thing that's wrong with them, because I'm crazy, and that's all I had to work with. So the stories were out there and didn't make sense, weren't in the context of the program that much, and I was struggling with that.
So, was this your first time coming through the doors, or have you been trying to sober up, or did
Yeah,
they give you the court card because of a DUI,
yeah.
or was it a like a, what do they call it, a wife card, where if you don't stop drinking, Joe,
Yeah,
it's over, or anything like
I
that?
had all those, man. I was the last one to know. They were
We're
trying to
always the last one to
they were
know.
trying to tell me for years, hey, something ain't right with you, and I always thought that, the judges, the police, all those people, I always thought they were out to get me. So, needless to say, I didn't, listen to what they were trying to do. Like the judges were like, and I found out today. I find out later on that all those systems are designed to help you, because we can't stop, right? And they try to grab you and pull you out of that and put you somewhere so that you could think about what's going on. So that way, maybe you'll change your life. I couldn't see any of that. They're just, leave me alone, man. I'll figure it out on my own. And just a dummy,
Yeah,
just a dummy.
it's it's the weirdest. This is the weirdest universe I've been
Yeah.
to. You know what I mean? This to me, I call this my universe, because whatever I felt. I mean, I've done a few interviews, and we both listen to a lot of people. Whether or not they believe that, I believe that we all have the same symptoms. We all have the same character defects.
Yeah.
Just some glare more than other at different times.
Yeah.
It's and one of the things that I was able to relate to was that a lot of us, when we come in here, we've never felt like we belong anywhere.
Yeah.
We never felt, I myself, my parents don't drink, but I never felt that I belonged in that family. It's just something in me. I
Yeah.
was born with that internal spirituality.
Yeah.
Never felt like that. And you were talking about depression, you're battling. Have you always battled, like even in childhood, or how was your childhood, as far as did you belong in your family? Did you belong around your friends?
I am their child, man. And I don't often talk about my childhood, because when around the rooms, it's like I feel like people think I'm trying to say that my story is worse than theirs, so that way
Mm-hmm.
that I'm more alcoholic than you, and or whatever the case is. So I don't talk as much about that stuff. Um, but the truth of the matter is that my childhood was rough, and
Where did you grow up in?
I grew up in uh, Norwalk primarily. We moved to Norwalk in like 1977, and I was going into like the third grade or something like that. And yeah, so like the childhood, I used my childhood as a system to get what I wanted, because it was legitimate, you know. And I never got further than that, because in our home, there was violence and alcoholism, and things that happened in that home that kind of like I know today who I really am. Like, I'm a sensitive person. I've kind of always known that, but I had to conceal it. But being sensitive as a child, like extra special sensitive, these things had an effect on me that I didn't know how to deal with it. Like, like Bill W. talks about in one of his books about early childhood and how some of the separation of his parents and his father's alcoholism and his mom abandoning him, and then the girlfriend dying, how that stuff affected him and he couldn't move past that.
Oh, what book was this?
I believe it's mentioned in what's the one that he wrote? I don't know. I started reading it and I never finished it. It's like one of his popular books.
Okay.
I can't think of the name. It'll probably come to me when I'm not thinking of it.
Yeah, on the way home.
Yeah. But like I said,
I should have said that.
Yeah, and that happens every day, all day long. But yeah, the childhood was very confusing, and I sort of checked out of life before I ever had a drink because I couldn't handle emotions, and if something was incomprehensible to me or hurt me deeply, I would just check out, and to touch on it, I told myself after my father passed away that I wasn't gonna, like, because I used to bash him when I was new because that's all I knew, like the part in the big book that talks about like people drink because they like the effect produced by alcohol. I didn't understand that because I thought I didn't drink. I drank because I was trying to mask all these emotions and pain that I was going through. So that took a while for me to understand. So it kind of kept me in that blame victimization type thing, and some of us are victims when we get here. We were victimized as children. There's really things that we couldn't do nothing about, um, and I carried that into my adulthood, that frame of mind. And I hated my dad for years, and he would beat on my mom, he would beat on me. How do you say this? He did things to my sister that a father isn't supposed to do to their daughter. And if you can get the picture,
I got it.
you know what I mean?
Yeah. And you know what?
Yeah.
That's very common in these rooms.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the most common.
Yeah.
Is that it's surprisingly how common it is.
The funny thing is, the other day I was watching a documentary on Lyle Alzado.
Okay.
And you remember how he played football?
Yeah.
And he was just a fucking maniac. And they had this short clip on him talking about his childhood. It was like 1 minute. And he said, yeah, my childhood was rough. And then he said, my dad used to hit on me and my mom, and he, did things to my sisters. And I was like, it makes so much sense when you watched him play the game and do the steroids that he did and all that stuff. He said his dad was an alcoholic too.
Wow.
And my dad was an alcoholic, and I hated him. And he was kind of he was in and out of jail, and DUIs, all this stuff. And he would hit on my mom, do all those things, but I still loved him. And he was kind of like my hero, but there was this confusion about it. And my mom would get back with him after knowing some things, and he'd come out of prison, and it just was like, what the hell's going on here? So I checked out, and I needed a drink way before I ever had a drink. And my mom would try to send me to counseling, my sister to counseling. My sister would talk to the counselors. She would read books, and she didn't internalize it so much as I did, and I just went inward, and it was me against the world, all them coping mechanisms, those the defense mechanisms that I developed growing up out of fear and all this stuff. And to come to AA in the condition that I came here in.
And now this is this time around, or the first time around? Like, you've been here before, right?
I had several court cards over the years, like, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 court cards. and I would hear something that made a little sense, and I kind of felt something going on here, but I just always thought that my case was different, you know. And
I
you know,
yeah. For me, it's just you weren't ready.
yeah,
I mean, even for the newcomers that come in here and they keep going in and out, it's you're just not ready.
yeah,
You still got that. I'm different.
yeah.
You still got that. You're not hopeless.
And what it really boiled down to me in the end, well into my sobriety, was having had enough of yourself. You know what I mean? Because it's everything else was always going wrong in my perception. So it was normal. But then that I couldn't stand myself like really anymore at all. And
Stone cold sober.
that's what drove me to to get active in the program
Yeah.
and hence grow a little bit, you know. Um, yeah, it, and I'm the guy that like my sponsor talks about. He talks about, you know, you have an initial surrender when you get here. You realize you can't drink and use anymore, and you're like, okay, that's accept that somewhat. But the unmanageability and the powerlessness part is the part that I don't understand.
That's the tough part.
And then I experienced that in my sobriety, and then there's nothing that I can put in between me and God anymore or anything else. I have to finally really look at myself in depth and start to own that stuff that the book talks about. Our troubles arise out of ourselves. It's not because of your childhood. I mean, that puts some torque on your life and your confusion and everything, but that happened so long ago. And I was like 33 when I finally crash landed here, you know what I mean?
And that's the thing. What you're saying is the whole. We come the way we come. For me now, the unmanageability, like you were saying, your sponsor, like the drinking part is, it's almost easy to see.
Yeah,
It's like for me, it was like, you know what, I need to stop. I'm tired of this, the way I'm feeling, all this. The unmanageability is a tough part because we're programmed a certain way that we can figure this out. You figure it out. You know,
yeah,
you figure it out. Or you figure it out.
yeah.
You know, it's like a math problem. You figure, so we try. And
And our parents and society says you have a drinking problem. If you just stop drinking, you're going to be okay.
and that's it.
And then, you know, and
Yeah.
that's what they think. But then when we stop drinking, we're not okay.
No, it gets
What
worse.
the hell is going on here? You know, and everything is magnified and intense and confusing and contrary to my nature, you know,
And you need a drink to take all that away.
yeah.
But
Why do you think I drank?
yeah, which it only seems temporarily, right?
Yeah.
But it just keeps going.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've heard your stories. And when did you start? I know you were in a rock band. You know, back, what is it, in the 80s?
Yeah. Lyle Anxato in a rock band. Well,
And I only want to talk about this because I'm a huge fan of music. I love music. And at some point in my drinking career or my life, I also became a backyard promoter, club promoter, and then I ended up being a bar. And then I caught on to that band members were getting free drinks.
Yeah.
And then the promoter was getting the drinks. So I said, I'm going to start promoting bands because I get free drinks.
Yeah.
And now I'm a big shot. The biggest I ever got was Coconut Teaser. Remember that place?
Oh, yeah. I do remember that place.
That Coconut Teaser, and you go to the restroom, reel them up, put them in your hand, and just, you know what I mean? Get ready. I'm the rock star. And,
in that moment, in that time, you're going forward, like this is where I want to be, and you picture it's just going to get bigger and more successful from here because I'm here and all that stuff. And
when did you start? When did you start? Like, when was your first band? Or
well, my mom had bought, or my grandma had come down from New York. This was when my parents were still together, and we went to on a trip to Mexico, and she bought me a little acoustic guitar, and I fell in love with that thing, and I just hurtled around that thing, and I'd hide in my room, and I would play that thing, and and I was never a good talker. I couldn't share what was going on with me, but I figured out when you hit these notes on this guitar, I can feel what I'm doing. It was an expression,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't have to talk about it. And I can just play this stuff to myself in the room, and I'd hide out there. And it drove my friends crazy with that thing. Are you all right? Yeah, leave me alone. Yeah, you know. And I had an older brother. I have an older brother. My mom had a son from a previous relationship. That's a whole nother story about that. But he played guitar. He was raised by my grandparents, and they bought him fancy guitars and stuff, and he deserved that stuff. And he was really good, and I would see him play backyard parties. I'm getting into like 13 years old, and I would see the reaction of the people from what he was doing. I was like, that's cool right there. All these girls and the kegs and the
Oh, I bet.
friends and the
They're-
leather and it was just awesome. And I started to do that. It was like play more with the goal in mind, buying Kiss records and this and that. And I don't know, the little brothers and friends of the band would kind of look at me, and I'd look at them. We're playing too, and we'd start to form these little relationships. And they were telling me, "Man, you drink a lot back then."
At 13.
Yeah. And I'd be like, whatever. And then we'd jam together and stuff, and try to say we were in a band and play a couple songs, and then that would dissipate, and then make friends in school, and you'd start to hey, you play, and start doing the garage thing and stuff like that. And I I I know now that I was very driven, you know, and I didn't know it at the time that it was my deep-seated feelings of inadequacy that were pushing me to have to succeed.
Hmm.
So I was very demanding. I was a very demanding person, and I had standards. I didn't care about life that much, about anything else, but the music to me was like, we got to do this right. We got to have the right players. We got to do the right sound. We have the right image. We got to do all these things.
Had to be perfect.
And I was hard on people. And but we got good, at doing what we wanted to do, and people were hearing about us. So people would come to me. I met this guy over here. He's better than that guy, or whatever. I think you'll like him, and then I'd interview him, and he'd bring like a 12-pack to the interview. So hey,
you got the gig.
you know what I'm saying?
So you got the job.
You know what I'm saying? And it was just a weird thing. It's like I've always like it's a gift, I guess. But I've always been the underdog, like sliding in the back door. And I could recognize that people had real talent, even though physically they weren't great players. But I could see that talent in there. If you just nurture it, it will grow into something special. And so I would kind of pick people to be in the band, and long story short, the best situation I got into years later, because I was playing in all kinds of little bands and stuff. We started. We were playing Hollywood, and there was a club called FM Station in the Valley that we were kind of like their house band. If somebody didn't show up or somebody was coming into town to play, they'd have us open up for them or whatever.
Who?
Uh,
who did you? Was there any big bands, or that they were small at the time and then ended up big, or they were already big that were passing by that you guys opened up with? Like your brother is older than you, and you played
Yeah.
at backyard parties. My thought was, did you run into Van Halen? Because I know Van Halen played a lot of backyard parties back when they
Yeah.
started, and
Well,
in Norwalk.
well, Van Halen was a little bit ahead of
Oh,
us.
okay.
See, like they were more in the '70s, and I was like the late '80s and the early '90s.
Oh, so you got the grunge.
Yeah. So that whole thing is another story too. But like around 1988, that's when things were kind of moving in the right direction for the music for me. And long story short, we're playing all over. We're getting a lot of attention, and some of the guys in the band that I was playing in had been in other bands with other guys that were making it big. So we had little connections here and there with people and all kinds of people in the industry that,
So you were able to
yeah.
touch it almost.
Oh
Huh?
yeah.
Like it was there.
I don't even believe my own stories, man. It's like did that really happen? Because we were in places partying with people and doing things, and it was real, but it was so long ago. It's like, did that happen? But yeah, so we ended up playing all these shows and stuff, getting a little following, and then we got a article written up in the magazine, and they all these people from the industry were starting to come see us and stuff. And at this time, I'm drinking a lot, and
Out of control.
I'd say so, yeah. And the guys in the band are warning me, hey, it's getting serious right now. It's all going to happen right now because these people are coming to the show. These people are going to be here this night, and this person, and they were like serious people in the industry. And I was just like, I don't give a fuck, man. I'm just, I got this, And I didn't know at the time that I needed the alcohol just to get out of the house by that time,
Mm-hmm.
and then to get up on the stage and to maintain that buzz in order to do what I needed to do and then cross the line and whatever happened. So we ended up we signed a deal with an independent producer, and he had a lot of connections. He had done some stuff in the '70s with some other bands in the '80s. And it was a production deal. And at that time, the music industry was a lot different than it is now. Now it's all, go on your computer and what you could do it yourself. But then, it was a whole different process. So getting a production deal was a big deal. It was like, you're there,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to make it. And, we went into the studios and stuff. And all this time I had a double life. Like I half lived at my mom's house in Norwalk, and I was renting a apartment in Hollywood with the singer of our band. So half the time I was in Norwalk hanging out with I don't want to say the homies, but there was homies there,
But they were.
but I wasn't like a gang member, but they knew who I was, and I hung out with all those people, and we were doing what we did, which was drink all the time and get into mischief and all that stuff. And then the other half of the time I'm in the band doing whatever, trying to do that thing. And I think around that time something had caught up to me, or I got in a fight with somebody in a drunk stupor or whatever, and I ended up in the county jail.
About how old were you at this time?
I was about
Roughly
20, 21 years old at this time.
young.
And one of my friends that I used to get in all kinds of trouble with, and he was a good friend to me. And I was as good as a friend as I could be to somebody at that time. I wasn't a very good friend to him, which I discovered later. And true story, though, I ended up in jail at the county jail. So I'm sitting in the county jail, and we're getting ready to go into the studio to record and stuff. It's a big deal, a lot of money on the line. And the day of the time that I was supposed to be out in Woodland Hills recording in the studio, I got released from the county jail. My friend came and picked me up in this Cadillac we called the Silver Bullet. And it was this big old boat Cadillac that we used to drive to the strip clubs and all that stuff that we used to do back then. He picks me up. He has I was playing bass at that time. He has my bass and a new pack of strings. He goes, "We're going to the studio." Okay. So he had beer and all that. We went to the studio.
Straight out of jail.
Straight out of jail.
It's like a movie
It
or
is
a
like
video.
If it didn't happen to me, I wouldn't believe that shit. And I went over there, and this was a big deal because we recorded some tracks in this guy's home studio, who's a big deal. There were some names, engineers in that studio that had worked with some really big acts. It was a big deal. And then we recorded in this other place in Chatsworth, and then we recorded in a studio called Cornerstone, which they have all the albums on the wall, the gold and silver of all the acts that had been through there. You'd think that my dream is coming true. I would take this serious, but I was like a rock star way before I was a rock star. Like I somewhere I knew that I was destined to be that, and my ego, and I'm a parts driver living this lifestyle in Hollywood, already thinking I'm already here, I'm already there, they can't stop me. My aunt would tell me, you ought to go to school while you're doing that, because you might need something to fall back on. And that was so offensive to me, because fall back, are you kidding me? That woman was so wise. Over the years, that woman, she has dementia now, and she's kind of in her home getting taken care of. But that woman knew. She was a teacher. She got her master's degree later in life, and she's somewhere. That's my mom's sister. She watched me all these years going through this stuff, and she would try to, God, I get emotional, because she sent me to camp when I was a little kid, and my mom couldn't afford to do that, and all the things that were going on. And she sent me to this camp, and she used to take me camping and stuff. But this is a little tiny victim story that I could tell. When I went to that camp and all the boys were taking off their shirts to go swimming and stuff, I took my shirt off and I had bruises on my back, and they asked me where those came from. And I don't even remember what I told them. But this is stuff that my older sister later tells me, because I blocked it out, But back to my aunt. And every time I seen my aunt when I got sober, I would thank her. Thank you so much for taking me. Because her and her husband, they would take me and her children camping. And she knew that I needed that family and that kind of environment. She'd pull me out, and she did that several times over the years, and she was right. Had I took her advice and had something to fall back on, I don't know what I'd be doing. But
one of the sorry, I don't. But one of the funny thing is,
yeah,
the strangest thing is, I came in here, and we come in here victimized in our heads.
Right.
And you're right. Some stuff does happen that carry you over, right? Yeah. But at the age that we come in, we shouldn't be using that anymore, right? Well, we don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm 53 now. I'm realizing, like, you need to grow the fuck up.
Yeah.
Stop.
Yeah.
Whatever it was.
Mature.
Yeah. Stop. Right. But.
What do you mean I'm immature?
Yeah. But one of the things is that people did care about it.
Yeah.
But we, for some crazy thing in our mind, we think no one cares about it. But people care. Your aunt cared. Your mom cared in her way.
Oh,
people did care, but we just couldn't receive it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the book says it's the way we demand it.
Yeah.
Like,
I want it like this.
Yes, this is the way I need you to care for me.
Yeah.
But people are incapable, but they do care.
Yeah.
And your aunt cared, but we just can't see that. And we come in here, we don't believe that, of course, until later on. And it's like, people do care.
Yeah. A lot of people. When I got sober, and like I said, I was in this fog for a long time. But when I really started to sober and get some clarity and stuff, and I just would look back at all the people
I
in
cared.
my life that were trying to nudge me in the right direction, and I just, no thank you, no thank you, no thank you. And oh my god, it's like so hard-headed and driven, and the walls were so thick, and when you start to identify with that stuff in the book where it talks about, and this took me many, many years, our troubles arise out of ourselves. Extreme example of self will run riot. It was like,
Though the alcoholic doesn't think
yeah, though he usually
doesn't
doesn't
think
think
so.
so, yeah, and I didn't think so for fucking, it almost killed me. But one day I was able to sit after the ashes settled and just go, oh my God, I really, 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 really had a big part in all of those things. But the truth of the matter is, I know today that I just I was incapable of receiving. Like you said, it's like I cannot hear. Like the old timers say, you can't hear till you can hear, you can't see till you can see. And then you come to after the ashes settle and you hear, I can see clearly now the rain. You're like, oh my God, I've been listening to that song for how many years? You know, that's kind of what it's been like.
So so before we get to like where we're here, the
We're gonna
sobriety. I
sober
mean,
up.
there's no, 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 no. What happened to that studio that day? You were
Oh,
supposed like you were there touching the ring. Your ego said, "I'm already a rock star.
yeah,
I already sold the forum.
yeah,
I already sold out the forum." Anyway,
yeah.
and what happened? Did you record or did they just bounce you out
Well,
or?
we had done all the basic tracks, which is like you record the drums and you record the bass and some of the basic guitar tracks, some uh basic vocal tracks that can be erased. Some it can all be overdubbed later or whatever. But we had gotten through all the basic track recording, and they're talking to me. I think I even got fired in that time, and then they brought me back in and they told me something that they shouldn't have told me. Oh, we couldn't replace you. And you don't tell an egomaniac that. It was like, oh, I knew you'd be back for me. And
Yeah.
just, oh my God. And yeah, and then shortly after that time, what happened was we got the production deal to record all this stuff. And when you do a production deal, you don't want to finish it because once you get the distribution deal with the major companies, like, the big record companies back then, you want them to have their say in the material. If they want to change something, they can, whatever. So you don't really finish the whole thing. So the producer's shopping this stuff around, and he knows people in the industry. Big names. He was getting letters of intent they would do back then. It was like, we intend to sign you guys, just right, not right now, but it's gonna come. So they would sign that paper. And he had a couple of letters of intent from some of the biggest companies. So I was like, okay, we're there. We're just waiting. We're doing shows and all that stuff. I'm drinking and using, and uh, I don't know. I'm just waiting. There's frustrations in the band and with everybody, and it ended up being going over a year of time between the time we recorded and the time that we were waiting around, and they finally got tired of my shit. They were like, uh, you're just drinking too much, and you're not taking this serious anymore. And I was doing other things at the time too, and they finally had to let me go. Um, which at the time it was a relief, and at the time it was like a letdown. And I would use that story to drink more too, and and it made sense in my head, being a victim and all that. And I had a daughter at that time that with this girl that was like, we were like in this relationship, very volatile. We both came from the same kind of background, like almost exactly the same kind of stuff happened, and we didn't know how to be in a relationship, but we needed each other at the time because we understood each other, but we were still trying to kill each other at the same time. You know, it was like she had to get away from me, and I got a job and I couldn't keep it, and this and that. And I really wasn't experiencing any depression or anything like that at this time.
Or anytime, do you think?
Yeah, not really.
Okay.
Not really. Not what was to become later was much
Okay.
different,
Uh-huh.
you know. But just maybe mild forms of disappointment and confusion, but not no intense stuff. So she took the kid and moved to Arizona, and at that time I was using a lot, and I was not working, and I was just kind of living in the underworld. And I chased her down to Arizona, you know, and I went over there, and she let me in, and I'm back in, and I met the neighbor guy that lived across the hall, and we were drinking beers, and next thing you know, he's asking me about drugs, and my girlfriend at the time, her brother had made her this bird feeder with a glass tube on it for the birds to stick, you know, hummingbirds. And I got the glass tube out of there, and we were smoking stuff out of that glass tube that night and shit. And she got tired of my shit, and I ended up in jail in Maricopa County, Arizona. Sheriff Opio makes you wear pink underwear and pink socks, and
Oh, I never. I've heard of that.
tent city in the summertime. It is just horrendous,
Yeah.
like 120 degrees, and you're sleeping in a tent. If you're working the night shift on the top bunk, oh my god, it was miserable.
How long were you there for?
I was there like 45 days, and they let me out, and we got back together, and I had a court case, and the judge was like, you know what, you guys need to get away from each other, because somebody's going to end up dead and somebody's going to end up in prison. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And she kicked me out shortly after that. And I came back to California and lived at my mom's, and met the neighbor girl. And she thought I was awesome. She was 10 years younger than me. I'm like 28 at the time. And I was on house arrest because I always got this thing in my mind that when I go back to California, I know I got all these warrants and things that are waiting for me, you know, because I wouldn't pay a bill, or I wouldn't.
But you did though.
I came back to
No,
California.
no, no. You did have the warrants.
I did. Yeah.
Okay, it wasn't just make believe.
No, no. Yeah, I know. Fancied or real, I don't know. I struggle with that sometimes. But so I made an appointment to go to the court or whatever, and I turned myself in, and I had, you know, like 4 warrants all over Orange County and this and that in LA. So they took me in, and they realized this guy's not like a fucking criminal. He's just an alcoholic, you know. So they offered me house arrest, and I took it. So I'm at my mom's, and I'm on house arrest. I can't go away from the house and stuff. And I meet the neighbor girl, and we just started dating and stuff like that. And I already have the one kid out there in Arizona. And by this time, I'm trying not to drink because being on house arrest, you can't drink. And I was probably on probation too. And I'm doing other stuff that makes you really skinny and, you know, go fast.
Oh yeah.
I got her into that stuff. And her dad was a gunnery sergeant in the Marines. He had got out of the Marines and became a San Bernardino sheriff, retired from that. So he would just look at me like, oh my God.
He knew what it was.
Yeah. And I had no clue. I would just disrespect him. I wouldn't talk shit to him because I knew he'd kick my ass, but I just had no respect for all the things that he had achieved and everything. I would think I'm an artist. I was a rock star. and you're just a Marine and you're just a police officer. Fuck, that's good shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I was just in this grandiose world of self that you could not penetrate it. And that whole thing crashed and burned. She gave me chance after chance and I couldn't stop. It was like I was starting to kind of get the idea that I needed to stop drinking and using because I'd been hearing that for so long. And I would try to stop, and my head would just scream at me like the past or the terror of the unknown. And I'd last a couple of days and then I'd have to get loaded again. And I would try to explain that to her and my mom, and it was like they just don't understand. So we had a kid together. She ended up leaving. She had to leave. I know that today, but I thought it was, why would she do this to me? Oh my God.
I'm
And
a
it was
rock star.
more ammunition for the victim, to drink and whatever, excuse myself. And around that time, it was like I I had a DUI that I never completed the 18-month program
Hmm.
for. So I needed to get my license if I was going to get my life back in order. You know what I mean? So I started going to AA, to do that.
What year was this, do you roughly?
This was like, I think it was like 2002,
Okay.
2002, yeah. But I had a little stint like in 98, but I didn't do no steps or nothing like that. I just was crazy in the meetings. And then around 2002, I started going to this little small meeting, and I was on my bike because I didn't have a license, I didn't have a job, and the people just embraced me. They were just like, "Oh my God, dude, come in, sit down." I got into this group that was a bunch of old timers. It was called the Saturday Night Big Book on Video or something, and they would watch, like half the meeting would be they would watch somebody reading the stories from the back of the book and then they'd share after that. So it was a bunch of old timers and they just embraced me and encouraged me to go to meetings and stuff. And I was like, something about the way these people made me feel that I had never really known that feeling, you know. And there was this old timer there named Joe Hart, and he was a retired Marine. He used to go into the battlefields on the helicopter and recognizance, pick up the bodies or whatever. And one time he was sharing, and I told you where I come from. So he's sharing, he's talking about Vietnam, and he's, getting emotional, and he's just like feeling it, like feeling the pain and the memories and everything. And then he kind of wraps it up and he takes his glasses off and he wipes his tears like this and he says, "Thank you for letting me share." And I was like, what the fuck was that? Because I had never seen anybody process emotions like that. It was usually you start to feel, you attack, you react, you run, you drink, you do break something. But he just was composed, and it was like this thing, and I was like, I don't know what that was, but I don't even know if I wanted it or not, but it had an effect on me. And I started following those people around at different meetings and stuff. And yeah, they're talking about steps and things like that. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. That was scary, because I never faced my life. I never looked at my life. When I first got sober, my mom started sharing with me stories about the past because I wasn't sure if it really happened. It's like, was that real? Did that really happen? And she'd be like, yeah, and she'd go more into detail about some stuff. And I would have like an emotional seizure, and I can't explain it. But she would tell me stuff about the past, and the feelings were so intense that I would just lose control of my body. Next thing you do, I was laying down, just going like that.
Wow.
Yeah, and that happened several times in my early sobriety, and I was like, "What the fuck is this?"
Now, early sobriety, are you talking about in 2003's
Yeah,
early sobriety?
yeah.
So you went, what brought you, we'll get to that. But I'm trying to
yeah, it was
what got
rough.
you here?
uh,
Because you're already in 2002, you say you were going to these meetings.
yeah,
You were hanging out.
going to Downey half the
Okay.
time, and then going to the snake pit half the time. Was like Downey was really structured, and they were just active, helping others. I couldn't understand, because I didn't know what they were talking about. And I go to the snake pit, and it was more chaotic, and it was more loose, and they would cuss and this and that, tell stories, and I could identify with that. And there was a guy named Judge Jerry at that meeting. He had a lot of time. A guy named Big Mac over there.
I've heard of that name
Yeah.
because on my second DUI, I remember my second DUI, I had to go to Downey. I forged my the card, the
Yeah.
car card. I didn't know you could do that. And someone says, you can forge them. This is anonymous.
You
oh,
can?
really? But I had to go to the one, and what was his name? Big, tall, skinny guy. I think his name was George, or
at the
in Downey were the mandatory ones where you had to go to the office. You had to go. It was upstairs.
at the SCAD P over there.
Yes, right by the train tracks.
Yes,
And
SCAD P.
there was this guy there.
There's Bob Leahy.
Bob Big
Leahy.
Daddy, he called
Big
himself?
Daddy.
Is that what he called
You
himself?
knew Big Daddy? Oh my God.
I went in there and I
Yeah.
remember him just saying, like, next thing you know it, I saved a couple of checks and I have money now. And he was a tall, skinny, older man.
Yeah.
And he would call himself Big Daddy.
Yeah.
And I was like, Big
Call
Daddy.
us Slick.
Yes,
Okay,
that's when
Swifty.
That's when I first heard it.
What do you mean Swifty? All right, I'll wear that.
Very calm.
Yeah.
Very and I just remember just listening to him, and he, in fact, was the guy that I first heard, because I already had been to, I got my first DUI, it didn't even matter because I wasn't ready.
Right.
And this one, still wasn't ready, but I remember him saying, do these steps, and if your life doesn't get better, and when by the time you're done with these steps, and go and drink.
Yeah.
Go and drink, but do these steps, give yourself, and that's all I remember. And then after that, I ended up going to the garage, something I said I would never do, and I ended up in the garage.
To the garage.
Yeah, I graduated into the garage.
I should have listened to my aunt.
Yeah, should have listened to Joe's aunt. But so what ended up getting you in here in 03? What was your rock bottom at that moment? And because New Year's Day.
Yeah.
Jesus, Joe, you couldn't get a better day?
I had quit on my own devices 100,000 times, and never was able to stay stopped. And I had quit New Year's Day because that's when everybody says they're going to do resolutions. So I quit several New Year's.
Oh, okay.
And then finally this one was like, it stuck, and I don't know, it's like I didn't understand what was going on here, and a lot of the stuff that they were talking about was just like contrary to my nature, and just I'll never be able to get what they're talking about, and pain is a great motivator. But that journey from when I first got to AA to where I really started to kind of come to, that was
how long ago? How long was that?
Well,
you came in.
I would have periods of time where I was okay because I'd be doing the work, and then I'd isolate, because I didn't know how to master resentments, or I hadn't really looked at myself in depth or anything. So I would cop resentments and I'd isolate, and then I'd just try to figure it out on my own, and so I'd run around these rooms for years, just acting as if I was okay, but dying inside. As soon as I'd leave the meeting, I'd just be like, they're following me. I had a lot of head trips going on, and I just thought I could figure that out too, and yeah, I suffered tremendously from untreated alcoholism, as I know today.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, and my story is a lot like a lot of people in AA. It's like you start going to the doctor because it's just what everybody tells you. You need to go talk to somebody, and I started to do that, and they have the plaques on the wall. They went to college. They know what they're talking about. If they diagnose me as this or say I need to take that, they're right. The people in AA say you don't really need that. I don't know if you do or not, but keep coming to these meetings and work this thing, and pretty soon you won't have to go there. I'm like, plaques, certificates, education, Alcoholics Anonymous, drunks like me.
That you can relate with.
I trust these people from my heart, but these people, they're certified. Who do you believe? So I needed medication, and I took medication, and it alleviated some of that stuff. But eventually that stuff would stop working, or I would need more of it to have the same effect. And I'm an alcoholic, and I didn't know it at the time because I thought I was bipolar or this or that, just all the shit that they were telling me.
And that's so one, I wanted to talk to you about that because I remember when you came in, you seemed like you were talking that way.
I was that way.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And I remember, and he goes, "Oh, here comes Joe. He's going to talk about,
space aliens.
Yeah, dude, I remember you would talk about Spade. I'm like, what the fuck's he talking about?
He needs to be medicated and monitored.
Yeah. And I remember you talking about that, right? And then I remember coming in here. And that's a trippy thing is like I remember coming in here, and at first fear keeps you not to drink. The fear, right? I don't want to drink. But then the unmanageability comes in, the emotions, the feelings and emotions. And I remember thinking like I am bipolar. I saw the diagnosis.
Makes sense.
Because everybody else is doing it, right? And I remember thinking bipolar, right? And I remember hearing you, and then I didn't see you for a while, and then I see you again recently, and your pitch and everything has changed.
Yeah.
So I'm the type, how you say driven. You're what is that? My personality type is once I find something that I like, I dig into it.
Yeah.
Around 10 years of sobriety, my whole journey was work the steps, right? Then 10 years comes, and it changed everything for me. In my 10 years, it changed everything. Apply these steps now. It's not just work the steps. It's applying.
I'm sober and in handcuffs. This is where I was supposed to practice
these principles.
Shit! But now I learned.
Yeah. And do you kind of remember when not year, but maybe years of sobriety, like what happened that made you take that turn or really give up and say my life is really fucking unmanageable, stone cold sober?
I had several trips to College Hospital, Harbor UCLA, Kaiser Psych Ward, and all this stuff.
Stone cold sober.
Stone cold sober.
Wow.
Stone cold sober. And the mind is a miraculous mechanism.
The mind's a powerful thing.
You know what I'm saying? And I know that. That's why I stay here now. But
it'll have you believing that you don't need this.
Oh my God. And I needed this thing. It was totally designed for somebody like me, and I didn't even know it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't believe it, but oh my God. But what really happened was a series of going down sober, unmanageability, because I don't believe what they're saying your life is unmanageable. I get sober and I think, let me at my life. I'm not drinking anymore. Now I can figure it out. I can hold a job. I can do a relationship. I'll just not do what I used to do in those previous relationships, and I'll be fine. And, and I'm irritable, restless, and discontent, and I can't stay in a meeting because I'm copying resentments towards everybody because I don't know how to live, and I don't understand. The playing field hasn't been leveled yet, and I don't see that I'm just like everybody else yet. I'm superior or inferior all the time, and I'm leaving AA and I'm isolating. My wife got tired of that. I found this great woman and I tricked her into marrying me. And, she thought she could help me, and she did, a lot. We had 2 kids and stuff, and she got tired of watching me do all right, get a job, lose it, go to AA, get better, isolate, get depressed, go to the psych ward. She didn't want the kids to be around that. You know what I mean? Because I was out there. I mean, I was in here, is what I was. I wasn't out of my mind. I was into my mind. And she got tired of it and she left. She's like, I can't do this anymore. I'm leaving. And I was like, what the fuck? And I'm half nuts at the time, but I'm in AA, and I'm watching the goldfish in my tank swim, a little fish tank, and they're giving me messages because I'm half nutty at the time, and I'm
The
watching them.
fishes.
The fishes are giving me messages, telling me how to act and what to do, and because one symbolized the woman and the other one symbolized the man, and it was making sense to me at the time. I ended up in the Kaiser psych ward after that. But as soon as I came out of there, I came to a meeting, and I knew, the pain was so great. I was going to jump off a bridge sober or do this stuff the way it was outlined and commit to it somehow. And I started to open up to this God thing, because I had no other choice, right? Like in the book says in the last analysis, after you've tried everything to control and arrange your life to suit you and you can't do it, and everything falls apart. She left. I got fired from my job. I lost my place to live, ended up in the psych ward. I was at the bottom again.
About how many years of sobriety did you have?
A
Or
lot.
not drinking?
A lot.
Over 10?
Yeah. Like right over 10 years. And that's embarrassing, but it's the truth.
Well, you had to have your experience.
Yeah, I really had to learn firsthand what unmanageability looks like to me.
Of course.
And then the bedevilments
Priceless.
and stuff, it's like makes sense. And shortly after I came back to AA, I was like in that 60 to 63 portion of the book where it talks about the hows and the whys and gives you descriptions of guys that are playing God and how they're discontent all the time and frustrated and disturbed and all that. And I found myself in that portion of the book. It was like, holy shit, this is why you're always upset about things, is because you're trying to run the show, micromanaging everything, wanting it to go this way all the time. And when it doesn't go your way, you just can't handle it.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to see the hows and the whys of it. We had to quit playing God. And I realized in that moment that all this time, the reason why God was eluding me is because I was so busy playing God all the time. There was no room. So when I was surrendered, my sponsor calls it a second surrender. He had a similar experience where he didn't understand unmanageability and all that stuff too. And he was like, let me at my life. And then he discovered step by step how his life was more unmanageable without drugs and alcohol, because I no longer have that anesthetic to dull my nerves and my thinking and all this emotions. Everything is real now, and I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I need a design for living, and I really started to embrace that and did a more thorough inventory, where I was, for once in my life, I was starting to buy that portion where it's like our troubles arise out of ourselves. I could clearly see that I had, destroyed all those relationships. My mom didn't know what to do with me, and all these failures that I had something to do with that, And for the first time in my life, I was less of a victim And that past was just kind of like, I started to see the good things that I overlooked because I was so focused on the bad things that happened. And the inventory process taught me something that I could never have understood my whole life, was my father. And that was the biggest resentment I had my whole life, you know. And I was never going to let him off the hook. And that thing just drove me and affected all these things in my life. And the process of the inventory, the way that we do it with the stuff that's read in between column 3 and column 4, you know, with their fears, their insecurities, their background experience, could I have done to somebody else what they did to me? And I'm starting to recover a little bit, and I'm starting to gain in personal responsibility. And I'm starting to see what my mom had always been saying about my dad. Your dad is a sick man. He was a sick man. I didn't know what the hell she was talking about. I thought she just meant crazy.
Uh-huh.
You're sick, you're crazy, you should be in mental medication. That's what my interpretation of that was. But then I started to look at his drinking and drug consumption over the years, and the way he was treated as a child, and him being like me, irritable, restless, and discontent, spiritual malady, separated from God, running on self-will with delusion, and then me having experienced all those mental features. I call it my alcoholism, my untreated alcoholism. And now I could look at his stuff that he went through too, and understand that for the first time, and start to see that I'm more like him than I ever wanted to admit. We're a lot alike, you know. And I started to understand why he did some of the things that he did. Not that I agree with them or approve or anything, but I can see when you read that stuff in the 12 and 12 on the instincts, and how it has a description in the first paragraph of the fourth step. It talks about normal instincts, and you know, they're god-given,
Yes.
and they're needed to survive and to do all these things. And then the second paragraph talks about instincts that override their proper function. And I started to see how that was happening in me, how I did things to people unintentionally, but it was instinctual stuff that I did, and I didn't realize it at the time, how wrong I was for doing it. And I could see clearly how that stuff can get even worse, because towards the end of my drinking and using, I was way out there, and I could have committed a crime that I'd probably still be in jail for today, in that frame of mind.
Mm-hmm.
And then towards the bottom of that page, on page, I think it's 45 or 46 in the 12 and 12, it says underneath those instinct stuff, it says, every serious emotional problem, and I had a lot of that going on. Every serious emotional problem can be seen as a case of misdirected instincts. And to me at that time, it was like, ah, it was just clear that I had instinctually demanded, I had instinctually behaved, I had instinctually did all these things. And these are the things that I'm suffering from. And then the part of the book where it starts to talk about when the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. It was like, every serious emotional problem. I got emotional problems, man. I told you about those little fucking seizures, man. That was scary shit. What the hell's wrong with me? But I don't have those anymore. You know what I mean? I could talk about stuff today, and it affects me a little emotionally, but I process that. I've learned to do that, you know, instead of collapsing and running or drinking or any of that stuff. For a guy like me, like you said, you saw me. I can't lie. I wish I could say I came in here and I banged out the steps and it was easy, you know, and all that. But I can't say that. You know, it was the most difficult thing for me to endure, was staying here without running away, because everything in me wanted to run and just walk out into the desert, and hopefully the ground will open up, and I'll fall in there, and it'll close up, and no one will know nothing happened to me.
Yeah. Well, that's
You
what
know?
we do. I mean,
Yeah.
that's like our normal instinct
You
is
know
to
what I mean?
run.
Get the fuck out of here.
And so you stop having those the seizures. You don't have them. When did you
Yeah.
stop taking medication? When did because
Yeah.
we had talked a little while
Yeah.
back, and this is my belief is that um, some people do need that help.
Yeah.
You needed it when you got here.
Oh yeah.
Okay. I've had some people that I read with sponsees that they were also taking these pills, and I tell them like, well, don't stop.
Yeah.
Keep follow what your doctor says, but let's do this also.
Right.
Let's go through this and
Yeah.
see what happens. I don't know if it's going to help you in that department. I don't know.
Yeah.
But like I said, I thought I was bipolar, right?
Right.
Because the feelings that I had was just like up and down, up and
Yeah.
down, just like loud. The voice was loud.
Yeah.
And I had nothing to numb. So then I tell these people, the people that I read with, let's just do this. And one of the guys, as we were going, he starts telling me, as we're working the steps, the fourth inventory, doing the fifth, ready to make these amends, as he's doing it, he starts telling me that he's tapering off it because he doesn't feel that loud. So some people do need it. Other people, I say, take it, and let's work the steps, though.
Yeah.
Let's continue on this road.
I'll tell you this. I still have days where I'm like, well, maybe I need something.
Oh, of course. Because I can be better.
Check this out. This is a true story. About a week ago, I kind of started to cop a resentment towards somebody, right? With all the step work that I've done and whatever, you're not immune to that stuff.
No.
And then I saw the guy the next day, and it was more intense. And I could feel the fog coming over me, like that little depressed because I'm angry. And I was like, oh, fuck. Is this going to take me out, like mentally or whatever? And what happened is that day, I was meeting with the sponsee and getting him going on an inventory. And through the process of getting him started on that inventory and talking about the things that we were talking about and everything, about halfway through that process, that thing was gone. And I was like, oh, this is what they're talking about. This is, in a short form, this is the whole program right here, is just that right there that I just experienced. And I was just like, okay, I'm all into this thing, and just don't go nowhere, and don't believe all these things that you hear, and just keep doing this thing,
Yeah. And that's the thing, we got this guy, Charles, and he says, you can't see your own ears. Can you see your own ears? No. I can see them.
I tried to chew them off.
Yeah. So I can see them, and that's the thing, is working with the alcoholic who's still suffering. They start sharing their things, and it's like, that's me. Like me and you talking right now,
Yeah.
We have I did the other interview with Billy.
Yeah.
And we had like a parallel universe. We grew up kind of the same.
Yeah.
Jerry, we grew up kind of the same. I grew up kind of the same. It's like we're not different. We just did it our way, and it almost killed us. Or we could have been in jail, institution, whatever.
Yeah.
And but the thing is, you don't know until you do it.
Yeah.
You had to have your experience and go to the hospital in order for you to jump to the book and believe.
Yeah. Had it been easy for me, I probably wouldn't have stuck around. If I could have figured it out and it would have been easy, I'd probably be back out there.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I suspect I have to be, not so much anymore, but that's the way it used to be.
Yeah, it has to be that way for us because we're so hard-headed. And the other thing too is, like we were talking about earlier, you were saying how we were talking about how like people did care about when we were drinking and this and that. You come in here, people do care.
It's
again.
Weird. Yeah.
No,
they don't. Yes, they do.
They do care. But my head is just, man, I'm telling you, man, it just, it doesn't go, it just, it's there. The minute I stay away from God, the minute I leave God's world, the spiritual world, I get in my world, and in my world, it starts to
Yeah.
nobody cares.
Yeah.
What are you doing
They
here?
didn't
No,
mean
no,
that.
yeah,
Why
no,
were they doing that? What do they want? You
yeah.
know,
Why are
they're
they
just
looking
trying
at
to
you like
look
that
good.
for? You know?
Yeah, and I still have that stuff, and I get to tell the newer guys when I wake up in the morning, my head, it's my head. It's usually fear-based thoughts. So, but I know over the years that just tune in, surrender right there, and things will go a lot smoother. You'll be able to get out of the house.
Yeah.
And it's not that bad anymore because I go to work and most of the time I'm not consciously aware that I'm in a 12-step program because I'm working and mingling with people. But when things get a little abrasive, I start to remember, oh yeah, you've got God and you're relying. All this stuff wouldn't even be happening if you didn't have that higher power and stuff. And then I get in that mode and I'm grateful. And
What does it
you
say
know,
if what used to be a hunch becomes a working part of the mind?
yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
it just does.
Yeah, like Bob Z used to say, he would talk about the spiritual awakening, and he would say how it's awakened him up something fierce. And it used to be a theory when he got here, but now it's become a fact. And that's how it was for me too. It's like I didn't believe any of this thing would work, and I didn't think I could have it. I thought I was too sick for it. I was afraid to do it. And when I really did it the way it was outlined, that same thing happened to me because I started to realize that I could be all pissed off at the world on my way to the meeting. I don't want to go to the meeting. And, you're going to hear all the same shares, and then that guy's going to be there and all that crap. And then you get to the meeting and you're sitting there judging everything and everything. And then that one person comes in and he's shaking and he's half there, like, and then you realize in that moment, that's why I'm here. It's not about me. Ah, shit. And if I can help somebody like that, you know, to me, that's like, because I know I was there on the other side.
Yeah. And I mean, to me, that's just fun when you were there on the other side,
Oh
and this
God,
person
terrifying.
swears that,
Yeah,
oh my God, it's gonna, whoa, hold on, buddy,
yeah,
just hold on, just
yeah,
don't believe everything your
yeah,
mind says, because that's a problem is that I believe what my mind says, and once I believe that lie, I'm screwed.
yeah,
I'm really screwed, and I have to keep doing this. And since from 10 to now, I had stopped sharing in participations. I didn't want to come to participations anymore.
yeah,
I just started going to book studies because it's a different share.
yeah.
You're sharing straight from the book.
Right. Yeah.
Book studies. I fall in love with the literature, the big book. It didn't happen. That's not what I came for. Step
Yeah.
2, it says it'll start infiltrating your life. It's exactly what the steps did. You started doing that, and
Yeah.
the 12 and 12, and then I remember going to Laughlin. I saw you this year. It was actually this year
Yeah.
when I saw you over there, and I get up there, and I've had trouble, and in the past, and this year was a year when it finally broke me, and it's like I couldn't share. I just didn't know how to.
Yeah.
I have a bad memory. I can't remember the book. That's why I'm always in it. It's hard to remember. And my friend says, "Well, you need to go to participation meeting and start sharing.
Yeah.
Your experience, strength, and hope." And then some other one says, "You don't go for you. You go for what you just said for that guy that comes
Yeah.
in through that door." And I
Yeah.
said, "What?"
That doesn't make sense to me,
No.
but it seems to work. I like that it says a design for living that works during rough going. Because whenever I start to feel uneasy about something, I know what to do now, and the rest of the time I'm all right, for the most part. But as soon as the boss pisses me off, or the superintendent's kid that's 20 years old tries to tell me to do something when he's hiding out all day and I start to get pissed, you know, I can connect with my higher power right there in that moment. Keep my mouth shut. Don't make it worse.
Can you
You
imagine that?
know,
When you came in here, did you believe that?
I had
You know,
none of that. You know, it was
like
just
what?
react. What'd you say, you little schmuck? Pick them up by the ear and shit and get fired and beat
Yeah.
up.
And the people
You
that
know,
were doing the steps, practicing these principles, they would say, "It's like you're lying.
yeah,
You can't, there's
you're
no."
full of shit. You
Uh,
ain't that spiritual, and life isn't really that good. You're just bullshitty. Or you're not like me. You know, you didn't go through the things that I did. So anything to justify wherever I was, you
yeah,
know.
justify our behavior at the
Yeah.
end, But all right,
To be here now, if I could say this real quick,
go ahead.
and it makes sense to me today, and I try to tell the guys I work with when they let me, is that, you know, remember when you were drinking and using and you were afraid to stop because you thought you'd go totally insane? And then you stopped and all wasn't well. And then you went to the doctor and they put you on something and you started to feel better. And then you're starting to think about the steps and everything and maybe getting off of everything. Well, the terror of stopping drinking and dealing with everything is the same as coming off of those medications, because that shit is working for your emotions and stuff. So you have that same terror of getting off the medication and stuff. And then you start to visit reality. But that stuff, all that medical community for people like me is a great transition helper from wherever I was in that whole world over here into being here now in reality and being able, and this stuff is the stuff that taught me how to stay here because I learned how
Uh,
to do it, you know.
Yeah, but the one thing, okay, so you're right about what everything you were saying, but it's not like you didn't do anything to get where you're at today, right?
Right.
I don't want to like,
Yeah. Don't let me fool you because
yeah, I mean, you did,
I
when we
did a
talked about
lot
it,
of shit.
yes, you've
I
done some work, a lot of work to get where you're
Oh
at right now.
yeah, yeah. And I had to get in there and to read that book thoroughly and look up the meanings of the words. Bob Z gave me a dictionary. I'm not kidding you. It was like fucking 8 inches thick from the bookstore he used to work at over there. And I would look up words and I didn't know nothing because I'm the kind of person that is living based out of fear and I can't let anybody know that I don't know. So I would make up definitions for words, and I would been doing that since I was a kid, you know, just making shit up to suit the situation. And I had to really get in there and understand what was really being said if I wanted to gain any traction around here. And it was a lot of work, a
Yeah.
lot of work.
You know, one is I wish I wasn't ready for Bob Z. I
Yeah,
remember Bob Z. We would sit there and talk very, very minimum, because I was in a hurry to get nowhere,
yeah,
and all up in my head,
yeah, yeah,
and and I just wasn't ready. And that's one of the things, man. This is why I want to do this,
yeah,
because I wish I could have picked his brain back then,
yeah,
because he was the thing. He
yeah,
was doing this. There was
yeah.
no make believe about it. He
I
was doing
got
it.
more. I mean, he knew that book and the history, and he knew a lot about this stuff. But I got more because where I was at the time from just watching him,
Hmm.
being around him, the way he carried himself, how he couldn't be knocked off his spiritual place. Like people would
Being
poke at him, and he would just,
something I
well,
want.
that's your opinion. You know, he just had a way about him that I wanted that, you
Hmm.
know. I'm like, maybe when I'm 90, I'll have a little bit of it, but he was the man. And my current sponsor, I got to mention him, you know, Bob D, who, man, he's the same, it's the same deal, you know. And I look at that man, and I've gone to see him speak when he's in town and stuff, and he's come to dinner with me and my family and stuff, and I'm just sitting at the table, and Bob D's right there, and I got my wife and my two kids, and we're eating steak at Denny's, and I'm like, that's Bob D right there, and here I am, and I'm a nothing, and then there's Bob D that travels the world, and when he comes and speaks out here, people come from all over just to hear him, because the way he talks about this thing,
Mm-hmm.
they identify and they need that, and I need that, and I look at the lineage of the people that were there before me, who his sponsor was, who his sponsor was, and it goes all the way back to Bill and Bob, and I'm just like, I got to step up my game a little. I got to get busy around here, because I'll never be able to do the service that he does, but I get to do my part here at Serenity Hall. I love this place, saved my life. Everything came together in this room,
Yeah.
and
Well, they always say we're enough.
yeah.
We're enough, which I didn't agree.
Right.
But we're enough. Back then. Now today it's different.
Yeah, and you look at the newcomers you work with, and they're hating on themselves. And you remember that.
I remember that.
And all you see is a good person. It's like you're confused and you're full of fear and stuff, and you need to learn a few things. But all I see is a good person right here. You know what I mean? And then you're like, I'm all right.
Yeah.
I'm decent, man. I got my days, but I'm all right.
Yeah, it's a good thing, Joe.
Oh yeah, that wife, we got back together. I always forget that part. But she made me wait 7 years. But I had a lot of work to do in that 7 years on me. And when she thought the time was right, she consulted with others, and we got back together. And I'm not gonna say it's wonderful all the time, but I'm seeing things differently, and I'm grateful for even the shit that I don't like about her. I'm grateful for that stuff too, because it makes her who she is.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm able to see all the good things. Like Chuck C says, his perception changed. He was sitting in the same chair with the same wife and the same job, but previously he was hating on all those things. But after he went through this process, he was in the same chair looking out the same window with the same wife, and he was grateful for everything that he had. And most of the time I feel that way. It's like, first of all, you're fucking sane, Joe, most of the time. You just have this level of contentment and soundness of mind that you never knew. You look back at my dad and his dad and those people, and they didn't have none of that. They were just... Grandpa was jealous of my grandma's affection for my dad when he was born, and my grandpa started taking it out on my dad. The same thing happened to me. I came to AA all fucked up and screwed up. This stuff put me back together. I had a son, and none of that shit happened. My son, he's challenged. He has autism, but I adore that little boy and all my kids. I've been able to fix all those relationships. My kids think I'm wise. It's the weirdest fucking... They know me though. They know my history. They've seen me go through stuff, the older ones. But my son is just... I adore that little boy, and he's just amazing. But had I not come here and I had a son, I could have beat the crap out of him and all that stuff, and
you might not even have a son.
Wouldn't that lady would have looked at me and said, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Joe, I want to thank you for
yeah,
for being part of this vision of mine.
I like it. I like it.
And I know we're outside and we're both kind of hoping we counseled, both of us.
Oh, maybe he's got something he's got to do, and hopefully he
Yeah.
won't show up.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe Joe will call me and say forget it, and then I'll be like,
I was about ready to get in my truck and pull away, and then you pulled up the street. I was like, damn.
But thank you, Joe, and you know, it's just this is a miracle.
Yeah.
That me and you can sit here talk about sobriety.
Yeah.
And I understand everything. And I one thing I've learned is I do my best to listen to the old timer and the new person too, because that's the bloodline.
Yeah.
But you know, old timers really taught me a lot. I mean, they were right. They were right. So,
right. A tribute to Angie Trejo. When I was brand new, I would go into the women's club over there in Downey, and it was a huge meeting, right? And I'm, you know, I got my bipolarism going, you know, I'm all jacked up, into self, terrified of the world. And she would see me walk in the door and she'd say, oh, look, there's my boyfriend. She'd say, come here. And I'd be like, oh, no, don't. And everybody's looking at me. I walk up to her. She's standing there. There's a couple people around her. And she grabs me by the face and she kisses me on the lips. And she says, Joe, you're so handsome. I love you. And there's nothing you can do about it. And I didn't understand what she was saying at the time, but I understand now, and I tell people that. Because she knew that I would try to find any reason to leave and go away. But she told me there's nothing I can do about her love for me. So what do? I just realized that go to these meetings and there's nothing you can do that's going to piss her off enough to where she's not going to love you anymore. So you're done. Shit.
Oh, that's awesome.
Those people, man, those old timers, just, they know us, man. And they say and they do these little things that just give us one more day. And, you know, it's just like, thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God.
That's a beautiful thing.
And we're becoming them, though, you know?
Yeah.
That's a scary thing.
You know, we'll see what God brings.
God willing.
You know, but thank you, Joe. This was fun. Yeah. And hopefully we can do this again maybe in a few years.
Yes.
See where you're at then.
Oh, God.
All righty.
Yeah. Thank you, Johnny.
All right, man. Thank you, Joe.
All right.